Okay, we're back. The printed out spacer. Basically, my daughter already should have one. I'm pretty sure that's one of the things we printed out for. And it's going to get rid of this wobble. In fact, why is this whole thing wobbling? There must have been something under there. Anyway, so we're going to pull this out. Scooch this to the side and see if we can replace this. The idea behind it is, the thought is that the spacers and the holes are not causing it to be flat and square with each other. So this is going to go into place. Instead, and theoretically, but it's going to replace these spacers. So that's the intent, and we'll see how it goes. And because I got annoyed last time, got a wrench, 8mm. To make it hopefully way simpler than it was before. I'll come back when I get this done. Alright, so basically we are now putting this on, and all it's really going to be doing is, oh, nice tight fit. The idea behind these is that they go right down into here. Keep everything rigid and square, and they did not make very big tolerances. I'm going to get these all screwed into here, and then I'll be back. So I got basically annoyed with trying to screw these things in because they're kind of tight. I mean, not horribly tight. It's just a really good fit. But power tools. And I had the release set low, so. Alright, so they're spinning well. Theoretically, they're all squared up. And if life doesn't suck horribly, very nice. Very, very nice. Print stuff off Thingiverse. All of it is, obviously, you get what you pay for. All majority built with great intent. Most of it will work. A lot of it after a little bit of adjustment. But what do you expect? This one actually worked really well. High reviews. In fact, I'll try and remember to put a link in the description of which file it was. If you go to Thingiverse and search Tronxy X1, it'll actually show you, tell you what it is. But I digress. Moment of truth. I still got to figure that out. Absolutely no wiggle. Beautiful. Look at that. You see that? Just no wiggle at all. That is just fabulous. Highly, highly recommend that. That's amazing. That's good. So what I'm guessing is that these screws, using basically these little spacers on the screws, there must not be cut flat, and it was causing the screws to kick away from each other, causing the opening to be too big. So again, another piece is they took what appears to be a decent design and they kind of came close to messing it up, because a lot of people wouldn't think of that, or I don't know, because this is beautiful now. And I'm sure their guys building them, that when they were designing it, would have got everything all nice and square, or if you used either like aluminum or metal pieces, it'd probably be better than the tubing. I don't know. Or 3D print. There you go. Alright, beautiful. Now what? So we will now get back to, now we're going to be putting on the end stop, which appears to be in here. So I have the first two parts of all this loaded onto YouTube. Told my daughter about it, and we'll see what her response is. Hopefully this is useful. So this is basically going to be this is the bearing, the eyelid pulley, if you will. And this is the piece that's on the other end of this extrusion that the belt's going to feed through, so it has a way to make the corner and go back. But it's not driven, so therefore it's an idler. At least that's what I call it. I'm sure if I'm wrong, somebody will let me know. Hopefully the volume is more stable. When I was over on from the other angle, the volume didn't seem to be all that hot. This seemed to have a better volume to it, but we'll see. Alright, so we have the pulley mount. Now I need myself a belt pulley. What's this? This is another belt pulley. Do they have all the same piece parts? They do. That's interesting. So they sent them assembled. Huh. So it wants the belt pulley. So yeah, it's basically a stack of, mine came pre-assembled already, but it's basically a stack of a bearing and a bunch of different types of washers. And then these are going to tighten together. So basically the screw is going to hold it in on this, and then it's going to sit here like so on the end. And the belt's going to come up and go through it. Now what I don't like, it doesn't matter, but many of them will actually have a bunch of teeth in the pulley, so it's actually going to be a gear that the teeth will ride in. Doesn't really matter because that's just a free spooling thing anyways. This should work just fine. Their intent here is that the washers will, whoa, as I knock my camera or my iPhone over. They have the spacers and whatnot, so the washers are going to keep it from sliding side to side, or guides, if you will. And then they have little washers for it was well thought out. I mean, little washers to be on the inner race of the bearing. Huh. Not too shabby. And then we also have more of the T slots. So it'll be interesting to see that Prusa Mark III. That one is, I've been excited about Prusa for a while. When I first got into 3D printing, I wanted one, but the lead times were so long, and I was kind of a now guy, so I didn't get one. And then the 2S came out, and I was still waffling, still playing with the CR10, still enjoying it, but wanted another printer. But wanted something better, different. Obviously the Prusa is better than CR10. They're different kind of realms. Although the money I've got in my CR10 is probably starting to push what a baseline Prusa is. But oh well, it is what it is. It's fun. It's a hobby. That's kind of the intent. At least a piece of the intent. And anywho. So I want my Mark III. So I've been waffling for a while. I don't know how many times I've had a Prusa in the inbox and sat waffling while I was watching TV and never pulled the trigger. Multi-material came out, still was looking at them, interesting. Not super excited about multi-material. I mean, I guess maybe at some point I could. I see the interesting part of it, but if anything, like 2 extruders so I can do dissolvable for supports. To me, that would be a more exciting or more interesting way, if you will. So the key I'm going to do here is I'm taking this apart. Again, no rocket science here, but I'm going to take this apart and be very careful to leave it in the same order, so then I don't have to rely on my brain, because those are either attached or just pressed there from like grease or something. Very interesting. So what they've got here is this actually interesting. So it's kind of acting like a spacer. They have this is going here, and then they have this isn't really threading. It's a one step up nut. So then the idea is that everything's going to be loose fit. They're not glued on, they just were stuck from grease. And then all of this is going to be squeezed together. This. But I'm wondering, so don't go too tight, because it seems to be. The thing is, I want it to turn. Yeah, I'm not a fan. May have to put some thought into this yet. There, now it's turning. So be very careful when you're putting this on. You don't want it to be too tight, you don't want it to be too loose. Kind of starting to think this may be so I'm just kind of snugging it up, because the problem is this, I don't know how well you can see, but this screw goes through and is being sandwiched in with this nut. So all of this is being pressed in, and inside here on the bearings there's 2 inner races that have little washers, and if you smash too much of it all together, it stops this from rolling, and that's the guide. You know, you want this to be nice and smooth, because you don't want a whole bunch of friction, because it'll wear out your belt. Anyway. Kind of wonky setup. I'll have to keep an eye on it. Maybe some Loctite, or swap it all out with the real bearing and everything. I don't know. We'll see. We'll kind of let it play itself out, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be just fine and won't matter. It's not really lined up that well either. See how this works, but I may have to put another washer in there, 'cause I'm not liking the way it. Because the idea behind this is that you want it to, it's going to be riding through this slot. Maybe, okay, we'll see. It's going to be riding through this slot, and then it comes over this part from the motor, the stepper motor. It'll go through the center of the extrusion and come back up and attach to this part of the bed, and it'll pull it back and forth as this turns. But you need it to run through this, come back over, and then not be rubbing on the center of this extrusion. So, and all of this also is going to be involved with tightness. So I think at the moment, yeah, it's not perfect right now, but I'm just gonna snug it up, I think, and I'll have to probably adjust it as it's running. See, that was a prime example where this piece, the nut did not turn. This has been twice now. So whenever you put these on, make sure it actually turns. So that time it did. And that one did. Again, this would be used for belt tightening as well. So I'm leaving myself some slop because belts tend to stretch. So we'll see how that works out. Kind of going flush with the end here. We'll see how that works. So I got the edge of this step flush with the extrusion. Should work well. We'll see. Not, again, like I said, a super fan of this whole setup. But it's working, so I'm not going to complain yet. I'll let it fail and then I'll complain. See, that's interesting. It makes it sound almost wondering if I've got, see there, this is a large size, this is another idler pulley. You got the screw going through, and this is the nut that is making it tight. Then this one is bigger, so it can actually be loose. See, originally I thought this would be tight against to hold the acrylic, because the acrylic's between the head and this. So I thought it would be tight here to hold it all in place, and then this one would come in to hold that piece against. To me, that sounds like a better idea. They made this big and loose. And they even call out in here that they should both be M5s, which is interesting, but we'll see how this works out. I'm not a super fan at the moment. I just don't like the way it looks, but we'll see. And now it says to run the other end timing belt through and then tighten to the bed frame. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to run this through the center. You'll see it right there. Actually run it through, and of course it'll come out this other end, which it did. Zip. And then this will go on that like that, as you can see. And this is in my way. And the idea is that this is going to come in here. And that's pretty humorous. So I'm going to you're basically running around now. You got to come back through this other notch, and put another zip tie in. But of course, it's made a pain in the butt a little bit, especially the way I did it, to try and get it up here. So there's got to be an easy way of doing this. And I'm going to do it I'll be back. Okay, that was a little annoying, but think of it as a puzzle. So obviously, looking at this, you have lots and lots of extra belt. So you don't have to be tight over here by any means, but you want to make sure you're snug down on this side. And now really what we're doing is tightening the belt. So what I did was I actually loosened the pulley system over here, and gave myself a little room so I could actually run the belt, because it needs to go, you don't have a lot of room and it needs to go straight up like this. So I actually doubled it over on itself between the pulley and the extrusion with the whole holder loose, and that allowed me to have that upward pressure, and as soon as I lined it up I was able to use a screwdriver to poke it through, and now it's out. So I'm just going to snug these guys up. Don't want to be up hard against the extrusion by any means. Again, make sure your nuts turn correctly, because it gives me a little bit of play now, so I can tighten the belt as it goes tight. So you want to make sure that these, I'll show you here in a second. One nut doesn't want to turn right, so I have something else going on then. So sometimes if the nuts don't want to turn correctly, you have to, come on, there it goes. Sometimes you have to mess with, see these three screws, and then you got to get the nuts to turn. And if, thank you Siri, I appreciate that. Siri's trying to help out here. So you take these three screws, and if I had two of them tightened down, the third one wasn't angled upright, then the T nut doesn't want to rotate, and then you'll end up with things that aren't connected right. So I just wanted to do a quick look, make sure all the T nuts are good. Again, this is all gonna correlate down to how stable everything is. And kind of focusing on trying to get the top flush a little bit instead of tipped down, because I want it to be up to give myself as much room as possible, because you don't want the belt teeth catching on anything. So I would put pressure up on the pulley. That's what it seems like it on mine anyways. Keeping in mind that everybody's is going to probably be slightly different, assuming anybody more than my daughter looks at this. Don't over tighten. Hopefully that wasn't a bad crack. Because this is acrylic, everything looks okay, but little strange sound. So don't over tighten all this, but you want it to be tight. This isn't really any kind of rigidity, but it does deal with your pulley. So now, the final thing is the pulley. Seems to be. Before you tighten anything up, basically you snug this up so you're holding it with your fingers, and you can slide it back and forth. That's the end stop. But make sure you're not hearing belt teeth or anything dragging. Zip tie, maybe two. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I'm not going to cut it if I don't have to. I think I'm going to go without cutting it. And this doesn't have to be crazy tight. So really all you're caring about is that you don't have, if you hold the stepper motor here, you don't want a bunch of play. Because if this belt was too loose, see how I have play? Probably can't see that. I have play. I'm holding the stepper motor, but it's the bed's moving around. That's what you don't want. So you want enough snugness so when I'm holding the stepper motor, which is here, keep it from turning, that I'm not, there's no play. It's just, it wants to move the stepper motor before it moves itself. And that's what you're after. So anyways, now I'm just going to tighten the zip tie on here. This is probably going to be the hardest part, because you want it to be snug. Final test looks pretty good. That's probably tight enough. May have to do something with it later, but then we'll snip that off. So as you probably can hear in the background, I've got the printer going, my CR10. In the step that I was at, which was starting to build up the Z-axis, which is going to end up basically going here, which is Z height. These little spacers that I ended up not using for the bed, well, it's good I didn't use them because they didn't give us nearly enough. You needed 3 for here and 6 for the Z, and then they already have another piece that are built up for the extruder hot end area, but they give you 4. So you need 9, they give you 4. I didn't use the 3, so that still left me 2 short. I also read a bunch of stuff dealing with the brass nut here that will end up basically being the guide for the shaft here, for the motor, or for the lead screw. Not very smooth at all, so I'll probably have to mess with this as well. But anywho, that's what you hear printing right now, is everybody was complaining about I'll get to that. Everybody was complaining about the filament was rubbing up against the this piece, lead screw. So I'm printing out a thing I printed my daughter, which was kind of a protector. And while I was doing that, I started thinking about stuff. And then I also found somebody's got these that I can print. So I'm set up to print those as soon as this finishes. Looks like a few minutes. And then I'll use Octoprint and get those things started. So yeah, the little bits and pieces of problems are starting to add up that is kind of concerning for new users. None of it seems to be a problem for me because I have another printer, but it seems like a lot of stuff you got to print. My daughter, I'm not sure how she's going to do these. I'll have to talk to her. Pray that she gets what she needs. She needs 6 of them. So hopefully she gets those, because she won't need them because I already gave her the bracket for the base. It's not like I can drive them over to her. She's in Japan. So anyways, I'm going to have to talk to her about that. So far you've got the bowl holes, did wobbly bed, some missing spacers, and those are the big showstoppers. The one that really worries me is the bed and these spacers for her. Although she has a fix for the bed, so now it's really the spacers that'll be annoying for her, unless she's missing something I'm not. But it seems to be a pretty typical thing. So anywho, we'll let that finish up. I'll get the next one started printing, and once I have all the parts, we'll continue. Alright, so I have the parts printing on the CR10. The next step was getting the what are they calling this? The X motor mount is going to mount to the 2020 extrusion, and in it there is one hole with a countersunk, and the countersunk's for the head of this. So it's going to go like this. And you want to kind of center it up so it's kind of centered in that hole best you can, and I'm lining it up with the top just for lack of anything better to do, and then we'll snug them down, making sure best of our ability that the nuts turn, which this one did not. Far one did, this one did not. So you look down, you can actually see the nut again did not. There it went. And then I'm just making sure that it's flush on the top and kind of centered in the hole. Should be about right. Snug it up. And again, this is relatively well explained in the instructions. I don't know how hard it's going to be to hear me with the printer going. 'Cause I'm not going to lie. The CR10 is noisy. The fans and the power supply are just crazy. Alright, so... Not sure what I can do much else without the pillars. Theoretically, put that on, but you know what I'm going to do? This is a brass nut that goes into this piece, and basically it's what guides the lead screw, which is going to end up sitting probably on this side. But anyways, I'd have to figure that out to see exactly how they're setting it up. That's what it looks like. Looks like it'll be on this side. But anyways, and as it's sitting there, it's going to run up and down that. But to do that, it needs to, it's going to turn the rod here, which is going to need to go smooth on this boy. So I don't like the way the threads are. Threads seem kind of boogered up. So since it's brass, hopefully it'll go well, because the rod doesn't feel bad. I may put some I get some silicone grease here. I got some lithium, actually. Maybe I'll use a little bit of that. I got graphite dry lube as well, but I'm thinking I gotta chase these threads out and may get a little bit of drill action going to exercise this and see if I can get it to be way better than it is right now. So I'm going to play with this a little bit, and yeah, you can actually see it. See, I got it started and it ends right here at the tip because the threads are all boogered up. So I got to hopefully be able to get these things to chase through and then clean them up a little bit. So I'll be back. So this is the nut I was kind of telling you about, and it needs to go on this threaded shaft. And what was happening, you got to be careful as you're doing it. It should thread in really easy. And what happens is right at the end I had some bad threads. Well, the trick here is you want to make sure that if the threads are on this end, you want to feed from the other opposite end, so it'll feed and line itself with good threads as it pushes itself through, and it'll clean out your threads. So I basically chucked it in a drill this way to give myself a little bit of more pressure and power and whatnot, and it's doing pretty good. But what I think I'm going to do now is put a little bit more lithium on there, and I want it nice and smooth, so I'm gonna probably chuck it in the drill again, but the shaft this time, and then just run the bushing up and down a bunch to clean up threads and just make itself all pretty and whatnot. You want to be careful you're not damaging threads when you're doing this, of course. See how that caught there? Right there, I can feel it catch a little bit. So just be careful with your fingers. So you don't hurt yourself. Probably want to go slow the first time. I'm going to go ahead and take it all the way off just so I make sure threads are good the whole way. And they were. So I'm going to go back on. Theoretically back on. What I'm actually going to do is run some grease up and down here real quick. Really light coat. Wipe off the excess once it kind of goes through. Just to give it a good test. And it's exciting. So I'm going to exercise this a little bit. Parts are still printing. Once it's all done, I'll be back. Okay, so as you can see, these were the pieces that I was missing, and this is what I printed. Again, Thingiverse. I'll try to remember to put a link in the actual description. But little spacers, M5 by 8.5 inch or 8.5 millimeter spacers. So we're going to try and put some of these bad boys together now and see if they work. They are doable but snug. Easier if my finger didn't hurt. So, certainly not loose. We'll see how this works. So I'm going to get all these on. I'm going to use a screwdriver or a power, I think, to help with so I'm not going to bore you. Alright, found another little issue. You may or may not be able to actually see it. Yeah, you can see it there. The spacer inside the bearing is not perfect, so be careful when you're putting it. Don't force things. Use something to kind of straighten it out again, and it'll slide right in like that. So just be careful. These probably could have been a little bit less snug, but I'm guessing they're going to probably help a lot with stability, and they won't wear or flop, because what can happen with these plastic tubes is over time they're going to get loose, whereas these PLA parts, as long as there's no friction, there shouldn't be any heat, and then they should stay just fine. But we'll see. Just got to get them all down here and snug and whatnot, and then we'll be golden. Alright, I'll be back. Okay, so as you can see, all the spacers are on there. I keep wanting to show the camera that I'm looking at. So you can see all the spacers are on there that I 3D printed on the CR10. And then you got the wheels. You want to make sure your wheels are loose and smooth. But I snugged these up. They're a little bit tighter than they need to be, in my opinion, but I didn't make them, and I totally appreciate everybody that does make these things, because as you know, anything you think you may need, check Thingiverse, because somebody's probably already made it. Save yourself some time, unless you just want to have fun and make it yourself, which is absolutely fabulous. So then I've got the T-slots all tightened up, and as I've said over and over again, make sure that they actually tighten well. And then at this point, we are slipping on. Nice fit. Those, and then yet another piece that the directions say lock nuts. There is no M5 lock nuts that came in the kit, just regular nuts. So if they ever have any issues where they get loose or something, I may have to put some Loctite on them. But for now, it'll function, the least of the issues at the moment. It's kind of crazy how much longer this all takes doing this stuff and trying to video and not look overly idiotic. Point out all this stuff that you normally your brain just kind of sees and moves on. So, doing my best. Hopefully it's helpful. So now I'm going to have to snug these bad boys up. I already put the washer up here. I don't remember if I said that. Now you don't want to over tighten these by any means, keeping in mind that this is metal, but this is plastic, so acrylic, and two PLA spacers, so you know, common sense. If you go too tight, you are going to have an issue, and just keep an eye on your bearings. Make sure this one's kind of less than wonderful. Not bad, but more drag than I would like to see. More drag than these others, that's for sure. All right, we have ourselves Z-carriage. Z-carriage. I will so edit that out. So now we are going to be seeing if it is actually loose or what. So this is going to slide over just like the other one that we used. It's a little bit. It's got a nice. There is a little bit of slop here, but the thing to keep in mind that as a general rule, it's going to slide up and down by the rod that goes in here. So it's going to go up and down, and theoretically gravity will hold it in the down position as it's printing. I wish it was just a bit. A lot of printers will actually use concentric nuts for this piece of the puzzle. Really, there's nothing we're going to be able to do to make anything any better at this point. So, at this point, it is what it is. So now it's going to have us hook up So now it's having us actually, don't know which way it wants it to go, but I assume I'm looking to see which direction the motor should point. So I'm assuming the motor connector should point down. The idea behind this is going to be where we're attaching the motor now. This is going to be the X motor, stepper motor, that is going to drive the hot end back and forth as this rail moves it in the Z direction, and then the plate or the base is moving it in Y. So it's becoming a printer. Yay. So we're just putting 4 screws on here. Wonders, I know you can't see what I'm doing here, but you'll figure it out. It'll be fine. I have faith. It's just 4 screws into the stepper through the bracket. Directions show very clearly what we're doing. Step 10. Oofta. Yeah, I'm not loving that. Let me see if I could. Maybe I'll get some concentric nuts. So if you do that, basically what it does is it takes the third wheel and it lets you, as you snug it, it goes in and out. So that lets you tighten this up so you don't have the little bit of wobble that I don't like. But other option I'll worry about it later. It's not bad, it'll print. I don't expect this to be my workhorse anyways by any means. So we did that. Oh, and now they want this lined up, the pulley. So I assume this should be about so again on the pulley for the these are basically not the gear, the end piece that goes onto the shaft of the motor, and there's a flat spot on it and you want to make sure one of these grub screws is on that. line up the pulley, so because the belt's going to go in just like the y-axis did. And then you snug up the other one here. The idea behind it now is we're good. All right. So we have that installed, and now we are, ooh, it's going to be a printer looking thing. So I don't like these things hanging. So I actually showed it earlier, joking around. One of the things I use these for is stuff like this. So what it's going to let me do is rest it on that. So that way, everything's kind of hanging and floating and not banging into stuff. Because we don't like banging into stuff. So now this is your hot end assembly with all the wires, and it's got way more wires than what they show in the picture. So just be careful of them and be cautious. Should probably give this thing. Now these have lock washers on the ends. It came all pre-assembled. So cheapy hot end it looks like. No insulation. Fan. Wires appear to be okay. Yeah, it looks fine. Drum roll, please. Nice. That I like. So I like the Y, I like the X. Z is the only one that I'm not super pleased with, but I can live with that. We can work with that. Nice. So that's now hanging there. Very nice. On to step 12. Ooh, lots of parts. Oh, this is exciting. So now it looks like we're putting... Alright, so we have a couple acrylic pieces that were in the acrylic bag. One's got some in-stop switches on it, and the other one does not. And the in-stops go on the motor side, and the other one goes on the other side. We'll set all that up. And we had to get some M5s with T's. We had to get a couple M2s to hold in-stop, and then the pulley assembly, which may or may not be together. The directions again show a lock nut on the end. This one does not have that, did not come with that. So whatever. All right, let us proceed. Again, there is countersinks for the little tiny nuts that go for the end stop, and they want the end stop roller to be down, it looks like. Yep, so it wants it down with the connectors facing away from the hot end. So that's what we'll do, because it's their printer. They know the directions. Again, so far the directions haven't been bad. Everything that's been concerning to me at this point has been related to parts not being here in the way they said that they would be. Which is a bit annoying, but Just a bit unfortunate. I'm not a fan of this because with a countersunk, I get why they did it this way, but it doesn't let you keep it very snug. The problem with countersunk is that you can't get anything in there to snug it up, so it's just gonna spin. It's not really a massively adjustable one anyways. You gotta kind of watch your screw heads anywho. So we'll see. Really what you have to do is get something in there. In this case, I'm thinking the little screwdriver may be enough down pressure. One of them seems to be okay. The other one's a little bit loose. There. It's just something to hold it a little bit while you can get a little grip to snug it up. Again, it doesn't have to be cranked in. You just don't want it to come loose, because this is the piece that's actually going to be connected to your board that's going to be telling you where your x-axis home is. And if the home's moving all over the place, well, as long as the home moves and it stays there, it's fine. But again, you don't want it to fall off, so not a huge ordeal either which way. But now we are going to put a couple M5s in that probably could have been easier to put in first. One of them's a little bit in the way, but we'll make it work. Just be cautious. See, that would be one of those, like if you're disabling a bomb or something and you're doing it by directions and they say cut the yellow wire but first. Be careful of it, otherwise you have to take it apart and resolder. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but no, I don't think I ever actually said the direction the nuts should go. Pictures make it pretty clear though. So. When in doubt, read the directions. Right, Tom? Not that you'll ever see this, but funny nonetheless. All right, so now we will put this here. I'm not exactly sure what the point of hole is. Once again, I like trying to just line it up at the top. I'm not exactly sure. They've got a hole for like the shaft, but it should never actually come into play. So I don't know what the heck their point is. So this has got the T-nut like right on the end. Of course I did it backwards so you can't see where it's at, but this is where it goes. And there's a hole right here that I don't really see the point of it. It doesn't look like it would ever remotely be able to stick out there, but I don't know, possibly because they use the same mold as this one, and then they just put a couple extra. No, it's actually longer. I have no idea. None. So, anywho, so there we go. So this comes in and goes click, 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 click. We're turning it into a printer. So now, I'm thinking it's on the same side. Doesn't matter which way. It's going to go like that. And I'm going to put it on first. And then I'll put the idler in. And since this one's not captured, that's why we don't have the belt involved yet. I'm assuming the next step will probably be the belt. Would be what I'm guessing. So at this point I have part 1 and part 2 up. And then we'll now do this one when I need to take a break. It takes a while. Gives me appreciation for all those YouTubers that are out there. Between doing the actual video, thinking through it all, it takes literally 2 or 3 times as long when you're doing this, which is fine. It just gives you something to do, tinkering around, making sure you do it the right way, no shortcuts. Still don't like that. Let me look at that a little bit here. But yeah, and then getting it off the card and downloading it onto the computer, and then having to take that in and trying to trim it a little bit, and then that's why I tend to not edit them at all. It's only supposed to be there for what it is anyways. So yeah, but it's pretty impressive, those guys, the quality that, you know, your Toms and Angus and 3D printing nerd Joe the noob. It's pretty impressive what they do. They make some pretty nice little videos. Takes a lot of time. I don't see how they do it. What the hell was that? Oh, that's what the hell that was. Pardon my French. So then I took it apart. Again, like I said last time, I just laid it out so I wouldn't screw it up. And I still thought I did. And now I'm just reassembling it back the other way. I'm not entirely sure why they choose to assemble these versus some other pieces, parts. Maybe the confusion aspect. I could actually see this being a bit confuzzling, as they say. Okay, maybe not they say, my daughter said it. And not the daughter that is going to be watching this video. My other daughter. My other brother, Daryl. Alright. Trying to see if it's rotating, and it's not. So again, like I said last time, with the way they have this set up, do not go too tight. You're basically wanting it to be tight enough to stay on, and of course I'm away so you can't see what I'm doing. Noob mistake, as they say. So then it makes it harder on me, but that's okay. So basically what happens is you're actually testing this bearing. You want to make sure it's rolling like that, but it's also, you don't want it to be so loose that it's gonna fall off, so you kind of snug it up a little bit. See, it's still good. See there, it got snug again. It got too tight. So I'm going to back off just a skosh. And now there's good. So that's good. These parts, these bigger washers will be tight, but it's the inside bearing is what you want to make sure rotates, because that's what'll eliminate see, mine's not again. So you want to just make it snug, because it's gonna, the belt's gonna go across it like this. And I can feel it rolling, because you don't want all that friction on your belt. All right, it's turning into a little printer. So we have our X in stop. We have the pulley, the idler pulley there. And now we're using the belt. And this is going to be a bit interesting. So you're not going to probably be able to see this, but there is a piece here, which you may or may not get a little bit more light on the subject here. There's a piece, there's a slot here and here, and it's going to be the same as this belt down here. It's going to go into here, go around the pulley, and over the top. So we're going to zip tie here, run it through, and then we'll come to this one, tighten it up, and zip tie that one. That'll be our goal. And see how it works out. So you're not going to see part of it, because I just told you what I'm doing. So I'm going to thread this through like so. Pull this off to the side to give myself as much room as I can. This is going to be the most annoying. See, I think we should have hooked the. It would have been slightly easier to hook the at least one of the belts before putting it on here. So what I'm going to do is thread it through. Use some needle nose to pull it through and around a little bit to give me some space. And this is just short term, because now I want to use the extra space to put zip tie in, and then I'll pull it up and put in the other one. So all I did was pull it through enough to where it had enough of an end dangling down that I could get to it easily. Now I'll go up a couple belt teeth This one I may have to cut off though. I'm going to go up just a slight bit more. So you just want to make sure that, because what it's going to really catch on is the see, what you want to be careful about is exactly what I just had here, is I made the end just long enough that it's actually hitting the it's hitting the pulley as it's just sitting there. So you want to make sure once you're done with all this that nothing's rubbing. So I'm just snipping off a couple teeth. Then I'll pull it back through again and then give it a good check. And that looks pretty darn good. Yep. I wonder if I can show you that. So, if you, well, I'd help you if I actually had the right thing. If you can see here, may or may not be able to actually see it, but you can see right in here. You don't want this belt to touch the pulley. And we'll have to do the same thing, so I'll snip that off yet. So snip the bitter end off. And this is now going to come across. And I'm going to use this one now, thread it through, needle nose to pull it down. This one's going to be a little bit trickier because just like the other one, now we are using this to set our tension. But again, there's options. Because you're not going to probably be able to see it, but you have the ability on this side to do very little because it's fixed. But this side, this end stop here can go in and out. In fact, looking at mine, go around this way. This could theoretically be used for belt tension, in and out. So really what I'm going to do is loosen these. You don't want it to touch though, so I'm going to come out just a little bit. Realigning to the top and the bottom. Making sure the Z nut or the Z or the T, which it did not. There it went. Make sure that goes. This one did not either. You can feel that it's so what this did is it's giving me adjustability. If I was all the way out on the edge and I cut my belt, I need to tighten it up. I'm all the way at the end, I have no adjustments. So this theoretically is going to allow us to snug up the belt like so. And then over time, see, well, I'm going to put a zip tie in, and either if I didn't quite do it well, or if it over time gets loose, I'll be able to adjust this out a little bit and snug it back up. So that is the goal. But I am going to figure out how I'm going to do this. So pre-do the loop. So if you pre-do the loop and you hook it up, put it in so it's going to, the flat end is going to be up, you know, in the down kind of position, and you use some needle nose. You're basically going to use one thumb to keep belt tension, and then you'll use your fingers on the other to tighten it up. So now I have that. It's not bad. Pretty good. Decent little amount of tension. Plenty good. All right, we had success. And now, of course, we have, you may or may not get to see it, there's a bitter end, and then the belt. We're going to snip that off and try and leave a tooth or two. Play a little bit. So I'm going to clip that there. Perfect. And bitter end. We're golden. So and now the whole piece is, now that this is all there, if I needed a little bit more tension, I could loosen these screws and actually slide this back and forth to give me just a little bit more belt tension if needed. The only thing I don't love is it's a little bit it's not centered exactly perfect, but it doesn't appear to be hitting anything, so we're just going to call her good. So there you go. That was successful. And now let's see what we're going to do next. So now we have another stepper motor. It's got this coupler attached to it, a Z motor seat, which I assume is this bad boy. Another one that apparently gets often misprinted or something or other, but this one seems to be printed well. The coupling with the grub screws, check and check. So all 4 grub screws are there. Threaded rod, bingo. This piece that I printed we'll get to in a second. And now some M3 8mm. So yeah, you get to sit through it this time. I'm not shutting it off. 1, 2. See, I read about this too when I was waiting. They seem to have their counts wrong. It's not that somebody keeps screwing up. They literally, you don't have this many mistakes that are this repetitive. But they were basically saying the same thing, that they only had, when they put the last motor on, there was only 2. And these are M3 8mm. and I don't have any extras. So for now, unfortunately, for Z, I am going to probably steal an X and put 3 in each. That's probably what I'm going to do for now. Just really annoying when, I mean, companies should always give, even if it's this cheap of a printer, should always give a couple extra of each. Aha, found one. Hoping we don't need any more of them. So I found 3, which probably is going to be enough for our purposes. I'll find another one or cut one of these, because I got some M3s, but they're all 16 millimeters long, well, twice as long as they really need to be, and I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not enough. Too many threads would be left. I'd need to cut them off. Holy cow, I dropped it. Still may be too long. Nothing washers wouldn't take care of. So anyways, and then also need some T-nuts with some M8s, or excuse me, M4s, I believe. Yeah. And we should be good. So they want the stepper motor basically, it's going right here. So we'll place that there. Now this, I'm going to take this off for now. So this is going there. This goes over that. Oh. They are these two. So you have little longer ones for the T's because they're going through this other piece. So we're going to basically, so what they're doing is they're using this to line it. So I see this as being a potential problem, but we'll play it as it goes here. Snug things as they happen. So I lined it up and now I'm just holding things solid in place as I snug it down. I snugged the one screw down. And I'm just going to where it's just touching, so it's a slight bit of friction. Then I'm going to put it back on to make sure everything centers well. Because this part is going to be all pieces of trying to get this guide rail to align well. So we'll see how this all works out. And we'll snug these down. This down. Mushing into PLA. They obviously are not ABS, so snugged them. They should be good. And now we put a couple of these bolts through here, and then we're going to put T-nuts on them, and then we're going to drop them, pick them up, and redo it again. hit and sand their parts. I'd probably lose a fortune if I started trying to do something that's 3D printed, because I'd be way too anal about it. Probably lose my shirt over the whole ordeal. So now we just, again, same thing. When you tighten these, make sure they rotate. That's not. There it goes. And then for now, I'm just lining them up even with the sides of the rail. Not sure if I'll have to adjust it later or not, but that's what I'm starting with. Don't over tighten them because it is just PLA. Just snug it down pretty good. And I think the only thing I have left. So again, there's flat rod there. So this is going to be flat. Let's see which. So it's the same grub screw. So my idea here is that I'm going to put this grub screw. I want it to be on the flat of the stepper. And now, this is the piece that I was talking about I printed earlier. So what happens is, this is where the extruder motor is going to be mounted up underneath, and it pulls the filament right past here, where your rod, which we can go ahead and put in, the rod actually is sitting here, and this is actually, for this style and this design, this happens a lot. CR10 has the same thing, and there's a bunch of different fixes for it, if you will. But what this does is, we'll see how it works long term, but it just slides over, and inside here you can see that there's little pieces that is actually going to catch the heads, that once it's there, theoretically will keep it from going up or down. So, and if the filament goes in, it'll just stay clear of the lead screw. So we'll see how that works. So to me, I'm already seeing that it's not going to be perfect, so we'll see how it, because in an ideal world, I'm thinking this doesn't get touched. I don't know if it mounts up above. Does not appear to. It just floats. That's weird. So they just float it up above, which means a lot of them will have a top and a bottom, but that's kind of what we're looking for. I'm just trying to see how well it's going to line up as it runs up and down. That's why this thing's made out of brass, is because of the lubrication. So I'm not a fan of the alignment. So what I'm seeing here, again, I'm going to have to look into it, is if you look at the alignment, you can see it probably this direction. The lead screw coming straight down is not lined up with the hole on the stepper. So I'm going to make some measurements to see if this to this is the same, and if it is, I'm going to have to come up with a spacer to pull the motor out a little bit. So, I will be back. So what I found, there's a few things, is the issue that I was having was the lead screw here was not lining up with the coupler down below. So I moved it all the way to the top, trying to see what the alignment was. It was way out here. So then I, just for testing purposes, I flexed it a little bit so it was into the coupler, and I measured the gap at the bottom and the top, and that was perfect at that point, which tells me that the Z motor here was in the correct place and that something was causing it to shift. So looking at it a lot more, it comes that this upper bracket is poorly bent. So it was causing it to be, it was bent up a little bit, which was causing this to angle out. So then I just used some pliers while I was watching it here to slowly bend it, so now we're straight up and down. So now when I drop it down, it goes right into the coupler hole. Because if you just bend it over and force it, there's just a ton of force, and you need this Z motor to be somewhat, you got to want it to be able to be loose. Now you also don't want to drop this thing down. The whole point of this coupler is isolation between the shaft and this motor. So don't let it go all the way down where the two shafts are bottomed out. You want it to have a little gap there. So then everything is isolated. Vibration ways. So now you snug these up, and basically at this point I should be able to use caliper and measure. You don't have to do this at this point, but they should measure 23 something, almost perfect. Well, 22.87 and 23.6 and 23.2, so really close. And before, when I had it kind of just pressured into there, you couldn't turn this hardly at all. I mean, I literally couldn't get the Z to move this thing up and down. And now, having bent that a little bit, it's going to drive just fine. The problem I still don't like is that, which I need to put more thought into here. Because this is the last piece that's annoying me, and I don't know exactly why it's simply love to have this thing. I don't think it's going to matter. But see that they're just not all touching. So I'm going to put some more thought into this. Okay, well, you may probably hear my CR10s fired up, heating up. It's going to print out a couple parts I found on Thingiverse after looking at this and not being able to really fix it without new parts. It's really a stability issue, and either needed better parts or a concentric nut to be able to tighten all this up, because this is just not good. Way too wobbly. I mean, theoretically it will print, and it'll probably print okay, but you're not going to ever get really good prints from it. So the good news is you can probably put it together like this, print what you need, and then disassemble and reassemble. Anywho, basically there's 3 bearings that go 2 on this side, and 1 on this side, and they're simply not tight enough and stable enough around the 20x40 here, extrusion. And nothing we can do with this current setup can really fix that. So we'll see kind of what happens, but what we've got, a guy printed out something that is basically taking place of these spacers that I printed earlier, but uses those to pull in the wheels a little bit so everything stays tighter. So that's the theory behind it. So I'm printing out the pieces, and I'm gonna work it, starting to disassemble this, and then once the prints or parts are ready, then we'll give it a shot and see if we can fix it. I just don't see any reason to keep going further, because I won't be happy. And we know it's all about me being happy, so might as well fix it right now, and then I won't have to worry about it later. Again, like I said though, don't think that you can't print with it like this. It will print, it just won't print fabulously. Hold that thought. My printer's going. So if it gets noisy, I apologize, but yeah, so my thought here is that right now it's sitting like this. I should be able to remove this whole thing and then just take this one side off, like so. Is the thought. So we set that off to the side. If I'm really careful, and I set this like so, I'll be able to disassemble some of this. So again, if you don't have the means of reprinting stuff, second printers are always way easier to deal with than first. Again, it's not impossible. I'll probably tighten that at some point to print with what you've got on this one. It's just not going to be as nice. But the idea is that you print it well enough that you can print the parts that you need to print. So you're using your printer to build your own printer, basically. The idea is to use your brain to get it. Hold that thought. I want to get the little ooze out off the nozzle. It's just the print starting, and as the nozzle heats up, it oozes a little bit, and it makes, it's not a pretty print. So there we have that. And this is what I'm going to be replacing. It's all this stuff that I worked so hard to put together. Alright, I'm going to take this apart. You don't need to sit there and watch me. I'll be back. Okay, so I printed out a couple pieces. And the idea behind these is they're going to sit and more or less go around the extrusion. And they're going to replace the spacers. hopefully do better. We will see if I wasted my time. That's me. Trying to clean up the hole a little bit from the first layer. See if they fit in a little bit better. Because I just popped them off the bed. So we will see. Well, that'll never work. So far, I'm liking it a lot more. My daughter that I'm actually doing the video for is messaging me. So these look like they may work pretty okay. We'll see. Definitely feels like it's putting some good pressure in the right areas. We'll just see if it actually is the right thing or not. As they say, time will tell. Certainly looks plausible. If I could get this to push out just a little bit. It's pretty good, putting pretty good tightness on everything. That's kind of what I was hoping for. That's exactly what I was hoping for. So everything's not sloppy. Man, this actually looks like it's going to fit really nice. I'll be putting the files, I'll try to remember to put those in the link down below. Although really all you got to do is go to Thingiverse, and there's not a lot of options related to Z-axis. So if you just do Z-axis, Tronxy X1 and then Z-axis, or Z, I didn't even put axis in. There's just not a lot of options, so you'll find exactly what I did. And I did the standard fit. We had a tighter fit, which I know with history that that's probably would have been too tight. This one was literally perfect, like press fit. Not bang it in or anything like that, but it was a nice fit. I wouldn't have wanted it tighter. It was perfect. Granted, I don't know if it's going to fix the problem, because I won't know until I put it on there. But it sure feels to have done exactly what I wanted it to do. Very awkward here. All right, so they all still turn. Promising. That's my daughter again. So let's see. Oh, absolutely awesome. And the change that I'd made earlier still is perfect. And again, you don't want it touching, you want it to float a little bit. Which one was it that I did? So we're going to float it up a little bit. And that's not it. It must be this one. Put that on and tighten it, and then we'll tighten this one. And then re-snug this one. You don't want Z-layer shifts. And then I'm also making sure that I can pretty easily turn these up with my light fingertips. And if you can see, there's like, that's my fingers trying to move. There's no play. I mean, obviously this is a single arm, so there's just a slight bit, but I mean, you're gonna have that. This is an absolutely awesome thing. Well worth the time and effort. And again, what you got is, if you can see, the pink, flesh colored or whatever the heck you want to call it, is the pieces, and they act like a spacer and they sandwich over it, but they're not actually touching. It's just on either side. And it squares up the screws, because that's what was causing the issues, was these screws going in were getting off from each other, just like the bed, what I was talking about, because they weren't rigid enough. And this takes that problem away and holds everything in really rigid, so it has no choice but to be the right dimension. And it's absolutely flawless, fabulous. In fact, when I look on either side, you can see just a gap on the side, so it's not like it's pushing against it. It's a great, great solution. And again, I wish I had the guy's name, but I'll try and get it all in there, because it's his design, not mine, by any means. So anywho, excellent. So let me figure out, and I gotta slide this guy back onto there. And now we're ready to go to the next steps. So I'm gonna figure out what the parts are and whatnot, and then I will be back. All right. We are doing the extruder motor now. And I was trying to decide if I wanted to do it out that way or back. I don't know if you can really see that. But this will have the wires coming out this way. I'm kind of thinking, I'm wondering if I can go straight back, but then I worry about that lead screw. So I may end up having to change this, but you know, whatever, we'll figure it out. So this looks to me like we have some piece parts. So what you're seeing here is right here is where a piece for the Bowden tube is going to go, and on the other side is where the filament obviously comes sticking through as it's being pressed out by this. So when you look at this, you can actually see the gear and how it aligns to that hole, filament hole. As you can see right now, I'm way too low, so I need to actually fix that before I go any further, just so I don't annoy myself. And I don't think I'm going to get it high enough, so I need to flip that gear around, which ironically was this way before. So I should have left it well enough alone. So we're basically flipping the gear around, and again, like we did with the other one, you want to make sure that you get one of your grub screws ready to contact straight on the flat of the shaft of the stepper motor, because if not, it's just not going to work. So I'm just going to kind of flush it to the top, see how that, because in a perfect world what we're hoping for is that this gear is going to be about dead center on the filament as it's feeding in and out. That's our desire here, because this is the piece that actually, if you don't know, is what actually grips, and that's too high. You may not be able to see it, but the filament goes right in here. So I'm just at the bottom right now of the gear. As you can see. So I want to move it where it's basically going to be centered. Now I'm getting OCD. I have to tighten it yet, but you can see now the filament is going to come in like that. So you can see that it's going to be right in the middle, because you want to give it the best chance, because this is what grabs the filament as it pushes it through the Bowden tube and down to the hot end. Bowden tube, of course, is this, but you'll see it all go together eventually. We're getting there. Looking like a printer, at least. So that's good, and we know that this is going to be good. Like, it's actually kind of nice. It doesn't give much air gap. It's not a bad little extruder. You possibly could even get away with some flex, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I may have to just test that. So now we're putting in a couple of these screws that don't fit for some reason, because why? Because it had bad threads is why. So now And again, I'm putting this together for the wires to stick out the side. So if they got to go out the back, that's a problem. Whoa. That's a problem. And I have obviously the wrong screws. Fifty, 100. 50%. Okay, I gotta figure out what the hell's going on here. So I was right. What the hell is going on? So what we have here are slightly too long of screws. Not exactly sure. Let me figure this out and then I'll be back. I'm back. And that's what happens when you're not paying attention to what you're doing. This should work just fine. Because it always helps to actually put the part on the printer rather than just in your hand. So these, and again, these are all just following straight by the directions. Turned it a little bit just to make sure that I could that it would all work well. And now we're doing another screw. So it's only held on by 3, which is interesting. But that's fine. That's all we really need. So this is gonna, this goes. The screw, basically you have a little short bolt that goes through a spring, and this is what's providing the tension for your filament. As this wheel, I should probably show it to you, this wheel that rolls presses the filament up against this this gear, and the gear digs in and pushes the filament through the bowden. So you want it to, obviously something's got to keep it tight against the filament, and that's exactly what this whole thing is. So now it's just a matter of getting it all lined up. And then screw down. basically that's, you just gotta play with getting the bearing around that gear, and you're fighting the spring, of course, the whole time. You want to be really careful that you're not accidentally stripping out or bending the screw either. And then you just want to verify kind of visually that the I don't know that I'll be able to show it to you, but you'll see the hole that the filament goes through that I showed you a little bit earlier. You want to make sure that this spinner you got two pieces. You have the gear, and then you have this putting pressure, and that of course gets moved away from it, and this is what presses the filament against the gear. And you want to make sure that the paste for the filament is lined up with the hole that's going to go out. Otherwise, it'll never work. And this looks like it's set up pretty nicely. Do I have filament floating around here somewhere? Do I have filament? I just want to verify real quick. Don't mind me. Oh, maybe I have a piece in the trash. See, this is the hazard of actually throwing stuff away when you should. Always have snips. There we go. Knew I had to have some in there somewhere. So the idea here is I'm just trying to verify that it all will work as designed. So anytime you're putting those in to make your life easier, you always want to kind of cut it at 45. I want to see something here. So it goes through just fine. Everything's lined up great. Not much air gap either. That's kind of nice. So you can basically see now, I hope, the fact that you've got the filament that comes through, and that also you can see the point of this, the filament protector, so you don't hit your lead screw, and it goes through and all this is lined up. And this is what you're using as pressure. You have to release the spring so you can pull your filament back out. I'm trying to do this all one-handed while holding up a printer. So there you go. Looks like it works perfect. Back in the trash for you. All right. We have all of this, and oh, now we have to put on the Bowden tube. Will the threads be right? Why, yes. Yes, they will. Now, do not forget to snug this. Don't break it, but don't, because you don't ever want this to actually come loose. Otherwise, you start spraying filament everywhere is just not a good thing. It's bad, bad, bad. All right. And for the record, obviously this is not a review. This is a build. This is us just building through it. With hence putting different piece parts in it to make it have the best chance it can. So where are we at next? So that hopefully, if this is on the wrong side though, I'm going to have to change it, but I'll worry about that when the time comes. So we put that all together. And now, oh, exciting. We're putting it on a handle. And Z-stop, I'm assuming here. So we are using 4 screws. So we're basically screwing this into the extrusion. I haven't showed you peel anything for a while, so maybe we'll peel this one. I don't know what it is. Some people just like it. It's that kind of that cardinal rule. Somebody buys something, you don't just walk up and peel their plastic. Ah, untidy. How bad is that? I failed you. All right, so this is going up here. And I think it's probably using the Oz. Some M5s, I assume these are. But, yeah, we'll put these. Oh, wow, that's going to be annoying. See, now, yeah, that's going to be annoying. So we're going to put these. I'm guessing these aren't. This handle's not going to stay there for long because at some point I may make some other changes to this thing, but we'll put it this way for now. One of the things I've been looking at is I'm not very happy with the instability or lack of stability of the lead screw up here. I much prefer to have some guides up there, but. And I've seen some prints where I can make something easy enough if I so desire. Thinking these are going to be too long. And I am thinking correctly. And yes, you can't see what I'm doing. Disaster strikes. Slide. Move over. Lose. So I need 12mm M4s. Thinking I see them. Thinking it's going to be this guy. See, that's the worst part is you just don't know exactly which screws you should be using, and you got to be careful because you don't want to. Yeah, definitely not these. Oh, there we go. That one and that one, I bet. Ow. Yeah. You don't want to use the wrong ones, because if you use the wrong ones, then you're going to be hurting somewhere else, and then you're not going to know. So spend a few seconds to make sure you're using the right screws, so you don't screw yourself later. Yeah. So this is going to be the handle, which is kind of interesting. That's why I'm kind of wanting to do a box. I've got a base, one base that I kind of printed, and it's modular and all that, and it looks okay, but it didn't go perfectly well, and I think it ended up getting too wide because of a few spots that I was in too much of a hurry, and I didn't make it quite as flush as it should have been. So now it doesn't fit right. So for now, I'm just going to be putting it on correctly and normally. So this is what I was reacting to earlier. So they put this thing in such a way that you can't get above them here, but you dang sure couldn't have got them in the other way after this was in place. So this is just kind of hokey, but it'll work. And now we have a printer handle. It is a printer. No way of controlling, mind you, but for now, it is indeed printer. Oh, bogus. I have slight looseness, so I need to fix that. I think I must have not tightened. These two got loose, these T-nuts, because that's what holds this on, and I'm thinking one of them did not go in, and I just noticed that. I don't know what happened. So that means I could take a whole bunch of stuff apart, which is awesome. But alright, I will be back. Alright, so I fixed that issue. Basically what happened was, with the other stuff that I was messing with, when I put this little upgrade in as I was building it, when I had gone back in, the two T-nut, there's two T-nuts, and then of course hole for where this goes, a screw goes through to hold one of the rollers. Well, the two T-nuts were slightly loose, and that caused just a little bit of bolt hole wobble. So I just had to snug them up really good, and now it's solid again. So we're back to being awesome. Life is good. So now what we're doing is putting in the Z-stop. And that's going to get mounted on this little acrylic plate with, again, screws. This could be interesting. It's my overall favorite thing, again, is where they have the captured nuts. This one looks like it may be about to do exactly what I was worried about the whole time. If they don't center them quite well. Looks like this one may not be countersunk quite enough, which is possibly a problem. So the problem here is it looks like they didn't quite countersink them enough, so I can't get any bite on any threads. So what I'm wondering is if I have any M2s. No. So that leaves me back to fixing this. Alright, well, yet again I need to figure out what I'm going to do with this, because I don't have quite enough thread to work with, so I may have to countersink this just a little bit more and give myself some more threads. So, alright, I'll be back. Alright, well, I figured it out, fixed it, had to print a new one. Basically, let me turn some light on. Basically, the original one, the acrylic one that came, the holes were not countersunk enough, and as I was trying to drill them out, it shattered. And pieces are somewhere in my room. So yeah, now my office thing, maker room, whatever you want to call it, has shards everywhere, but that's okay. So I printed one and now it's going to work. So we're going to mount this thing with the T-rail. So we got her figured out. I had to end up printing another one because when I was countersinking the acrylic piece out, it shattered and sprayed little pieces of plastic all over the little office here where I do my printing. So I ended up printing another one, and this one seems to be working well now. And we're just going to use the T-block and get it mounted in here. Not sure exactly where it's going to mount what we're at, but it'll probably we'll have to play with it as we're setting the Z height. So basically this is just mounted right next, according to the directions, right next to the on this one rail, and we'll loosen it up and be able to slide it up and down to determine the height of the bed. Easy peasy. So yeah, another in-stop completed. So we're getting close. It's pretty much almost a full one, and now we have a bed plate is left. That's exciting. So we have a bed plate. Some countersunk screws, so we got some trying to figure out which screws I'm supposed to be using here. M3s. appears to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we got 4 screws, and now we've got to get 3 more thumb screws. So I got those. And then we need some springs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And why do they have so many? Don't know. All right. So we're going to be putting that on here. I'm not sure. Like I said, I really don't want to cut this if I don't have to. Yeah, what the heck. What the heck. Cut it out. I'm going to take these off. So this is going to be a 4-screw bed leveling, and it's got a little, I wonder what the heck you call it. It's kind of a flexible, plasticky, opaque bed. You're not like a glass. The flatness is all going to come from this acrylic, so we'll see how well that works. But as you can see, there's 4. This is such a small bed. This is kind of adorable. So we have so you're basically putting the screws in with the springs. The idea behind this is we're going to be tightening the bed against the springs so it's under tension. And that's how we'll end up leveling it. The key with this is whenever you're setting this up, you're going to end up basically setting up the Z height here at one point. And what you don't want to do is set the Z height at the top end of a spring, because the more spring there is, the more force it is, and it's more stable. So if you set it up poorly at the top of its spring, it does, see how it doesn't take much at all, but the further you push it down, you start getting a pretty good force on it. So that's what you're after. But I'm expecting if we get enough spring compression with a small bed as this is, shouldn't really have to do much at all after it's initially set up. After we get our first good lines down, should be cakewalk. Should be. Really being annoying. A lot of times printers, they'll put the user groups out here and everything will start putting things like bed leveling knobs and all that, but looking at this one, I'm not sure they're going to be able to, I don't think anybody's going to be able to do a lot. Because of space. But again, I really am not thinking that this is going to have to get done a whole lot. So, we have a bed. This is the piece I was talking about. Plastic. And more plastic. So I don't know how it's going to work. I'm used to a glass bed, heated and all that, so I really don't know. Let's see. 3 clips. Very odd number. So I'm thinking one here. One there. And one there. And what we have here, mechanically, is a finished CR10. Excuse me, Tronxy. Obviously it needs to be all wired up. Thinking it's going to be nice. Sitting here looking for my phone. All right. Oh, of course it has the last bit of non-electrical. So this is the Bowden tube. The Bowden tube goes into here, and you can't just set it in here, because if it starts printing filament out, it doesn't know that there's no filament coming all the way down, and it'll pop right out, and your filament will just spool and like fill your room. So you need to make sure it's pushed in really well, and you give it a good tug and make sure it's all nice and stable so it doesn't pop out. Alright, kind of forgot to start recording again, but putting the control box together, all it had to do was grab the bottom, and then we're putting the control board on. pretty straightforward. Annoying with these little nuts, but keeping this dilemma of if I want to try and use that other box, but just can't decide. Damn it. Okay, so we're setting up this. We've got the control board mounted onto the bottom, and now we're going to be mounting some screws somehow. So this box is starting to annoy me already. It's an interesting setup, to say the least. But not real fun to put together. You're basically having to put, see these little slot? This screw goes up here and there's a nut that goes right into that little piece, and you have to hold all those together somehow. Bizarre way of doing it, but who am I to judge? So this is going to be boring, so I'm going to go ahead and unless something exciting happens, I'm just going to restart after this. Okay, I don't know if it's really recording, but because I can't really see frame, my phone's got an issue, but the box is for the most part put together. Obviously you don't want to put the back or the top on until we get the thing wired. So I'm ready to start the wiring. I've ran the extruder a little bit. Maybe you can see a little bit better. Extruder along the Bowden tube. So now I've got all these wires. This is for the heater, the thermistor for the hot end, and the fan. And then I've got all the end stops that I've got to figure out and run. So basically each one of them's got to hook up into this. As we're doing all the wiring, we also have to hook all the motor wires up and then run them into here. And each of these we have to make sure stays free. So that's the hard part. Think of the Z-axis going up and down, X going back and forth. Not so much worried about X because you've already really, that's self important as long as you follow the Bowden tube. And then of course the Y, but the Y doesn't move for the point that we care about. So for the most part, we need everything to come this way and then bundle together and go into the control box. They do have some prettiness stuff, and I'm holding that until once everything's together, I'll probably get a better feel for what's going on. So anyways, I'm not going to record all of this because it's more basically table tidiness. You follow the instructions. It tells you where to hook each one up. The board's well labeled. It shouldn't be any problem. So if anything jumps out, I'll say something. Okay, so I have everything wired-ish. It's all plugged in. It's all ready to go. I don't have a SD card in it at the moment, but we will. Everything else, for the most part, is plugged in. I just don't have the main power going to it yet. Everything's temporary, obviously, because with everything else that went on, I'm not expecting everything here to be flawless. I've got to figure out how I'm going to wire everything. There's not a ton. The wires are not super long, and others are just crazy long. So the end stops are going to be the hardest. They're just not real long. But I'll figure that out as we go. Yeah. Thinking I'm going to try and power it on. So we have Repetier, Tronxy 3D printer ready, main flow, everything's good. The fan actually came on, going the right way. So far so good. So I am now I'm just kind of looking at it right now, trying to see what I have. I've never really used this, so I don't love this, but quick settings, what's that? Basically, I'm going through the menus right now. I don't want to home all. I'm trying to find the there we go. So I'm going to home X, and theoretically it should hit this end stop. Yay. Now let's go for Y. Didn't like that. But okay. All the axes homed. I'm not a fan of the sound of X or Y right now. Something's not perfect. Almost like it's backwards. Something's not quite right with Y. I think it may be backwards or something. I'm just moving some of the axes in all their directions. It looks like the wheel's going to hit. At 145, maybe 146. Okay. Oh, we haven't tried the extruder yet. And that's working too. Very nice. Very nice. On home Y. Actually on home X. See why there's something going the wrong way or something. Let's check out what's going on. Possibly. It looks like the ground is loose. See if that's any better. Hey! So basically what I just found there was, because it was all grindy and stuff the way it was, I knew that just it wasn't right. So I looked, and in the down here there was a connector, one pin, the ground pin was pulled out, so that's prevented noise from getting canceled, so that caused noise, I guess you want to call it. So let me do a now it's controlling much better. Just trying to move each one their max distance, and then I'm going to home all, and then maybe ramp up the see if I can ramp up the heater. Actually, I may ramp up the nozzle now. That. Oh, it is as far as it'll go. That is what it does. Alright. So Z's finishing up, and then we will move it up a little bit after this final inlet, and then we will try and heat up the hot end. If I can find it. Oh. Alrighty then. So it's reading a temp, which is good. And the command is 0, but it's reading 23.9. C, of course. So I'm going to do the extruder temp is set at 0. I am going to take it to 180 as first. And I heard it kind of kick in, so we will see what it says. It is ramping, it appears, to 180. So, wow. Well, isn't that just a hoot? bed. And I'm thinking I'm gonna wanna so far so good. If it stabilizes, I am going to play with this. Got a little bit of white filament here. It is sitting at commanded 180, and I'm sitting at 179.1. May end up having to do some pit adjustments on this. I mean, it's fluctuating about a degree, which honestly isn't terrible, but not perfect. Alright, I'm going to shut off and I'm going to set up a few things, and then we may do our first print. Alright, so it seems to be somewhat heating regularly. I may have some pit adjustments to do, but for the most part, functionally wise, it is working. I am now trying to adjust the Z-stop. And what that means is I had it knitted in kind of a safe spot. I lifted the Z up kind of higher. And now I'm trying to actually set the bed level. So for now, I am cooling off the bed. And I am going to, basically what I did is I moved the Z end stop down a little bit. Now I'm going to re-knit the Z axis, which is going to cause it to lower down closer to the bed, because I'm working on bed leveling now. So the key behind this now is a paper. Take a sheet of paper, and you don't want to drive the nozzle into the bed too much, but you want a piece of paper that will just drag on the corner. And then you go to another corner. The key here is that you want to stop the you want to make sure you're not super hot on the nozzle. I'm lowering the bed so I can get the nozzle over. You want to be careful of Z height. Because if you mess with the Z, may have to go up a little bit. So I'm just going through all four corners now. And again, you're looking for a piece of paper to be able to go wind tools in and out. So there's knobs under the bed. There's tons of videos out there that do that. That can talk probably one heck of a lot better than I can about it. But you're basically wanting to have a piece of paper that just barely drags on it. And the big key is once you go across it once, you're going to go around again. Not because you suck the first time, but because when you make it on the one, it changes. So like this now is too tight. So I'll loosen it until it's just dragging. And then go back across again. Now I'm going back to the other corner, the back corner. Again, just so you're understanding, it's underneath the nozzle is what you're looking for. You want to have about the same drag on all four corners. Because that's how you know it'll be even on your first layer. So we're getting closer. And then I get to a knit and check it one more time. It really comes down to your first layer. The more you can get this figured out, the more likely you'll have successful prints. Sometimes it takes a few times around. Remember, if you tighten the screw, it pulls the bed away from Ow. Getting really close, I think. I would barely need changes now. I am thinking I'm going to go to this though. I think we're about done. I know that's not exciting, I apologize, but it's super important. Alright. I think it's ready to go for its first print. Let's start it fresh. 155. So let's go with home all. Should do X, Y, much better, and Z. Alright, I'm going to restart to the next clip for the hot end. Alright, we're getting ready to start the first print. We've leveled the bed, we've set our Z height, we've checked temps, we've checked motors. The only thing we haven't done is loaded filament, which we're going to now knit. So we're going to initialize. Preheat PLA. So now we're preheating the hot end, and we're gonna feed some filament in there, and then while that's happening, I'm gonna check the SD card out. I'm going to say print a file. There is one thing on here. So So I suppose that's what we're going to print. Whatever Tronxy X1 is, that's what we're going to try and print. Once it heats up, I might do some filament. Obviously, I've got to clean all this thing up. It's at 142. And I'm going to go ahead and get it started. So I've got my filament on my spool, and I'm going to, it's cut at 45, and I'm going to actually recut it just to make sure it's at a good 45. It's kind of nubbed out. So now we're going to run it through the holder here. We squeeze the and now we're just pushing it down until it actually gets, I see it going through the tube. I don't want to get it into the hot end quite yet, because we don't want it in there till it's hot. But we're pretty much at 190 now. So I'm going to go ahead and feed it. And that's going down into the hot end. And theoretically should be, and it is, making so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to flow some by going to the extruder position, all right. We have filament. Now I don't know what it's going to do. We're just going to kind of see the overall functionality now. I don't know how they have the file saved, so who knows what's going to happen, but oh, there's more here. 20mm box pillar, Tronxy pillar test. So I see a pillar test G code. That's what we're doing. No idea what it's going to do here. So it's homing Z. I only put twos in. So it is going to 200 degrees, which is good. Causing some ooze, but that's okay. There's no part cooling fan, so we'll see how this goes. I only put glue in the center, so I really don't know what's going to happen. But whatever, we'll figure it out. It should be starting soon. Yep, it's oozing like crazy now. see what their G code looks like. So it is not sticking. Don't know how to end the I have no idea how to stop it. It's certainly not printing. This is annoying. I have no idea how to stop it. See, it's trying to print, but it's not sticking. So, so far not liking the bed, but I may not have squished it far enough. I just can't figure out how to stop it. Short of fine. Fine, I say. So I just basically, since it didn't stick and I have a glue on the bed there, I went ahead and just raised the bed a little bit to see if I can squish it better. See if maybe that's the problem. Bottom line is, it's a printer. Now it's just a matter of getting it set up right. 130. It's heating up again. If this one fails, I'll probably just call it till tomorrow and figure out why it's not sticking. It's probably squish. I didn't have it down far enough. I'm not used to printing on a non-heated bed. It's oozing. You know what I could do? If it's doing all this crazy stuff, I could I'm just basically lowering it as it comes down. The outer edges didn't obviously go very well. It's a printer. So it looks like it tried to print a brim, and that's what was failing, and it looks like I managed to get it to start sticking before it, or as it was printing the regular part. It's printering. Now this is all pre-sliced G-code. I haven't done anything with it. Not entirely sure what it's printing, but it's printing something. It was on the card. While that's printing, I'm going to be back. Alright, I'm gonna shut it off and let it finish printing and I'll resume. So the print finished. It's not bad. Got a decent look, a little bit of elephant foot, so it's smashed a little bit. That'll take some time just to play with. As I see a little bit of Z-banding. Again, I have no idea. I've done nothing setup wise, but overall this finish and everything is really good. So that's it. Success. Thanks for watching.